Hey everybody, I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible. And we're doing that one brave word at a time with some pretty amazing authors here to help me with that mission today. The book that we have coming out soon is called Rites and Rituals, Harnessing the Power of Sacred Ceremony. And before I introduce the authors here today, I want to say a big thank you to Ariana Platten, our lead author. Thank you so much for the big mission and vision you had with this book and the stellar author expert cast you wanted to join you to teach people about rites and rituals and the power of ceremony. Ariana, we wouldn't be here without you. So thank you so much for that vision that you had. So who do I have with me in my Zoom room? Erica Jones is a transformational coach, healer, and the creator of the Healing Revolution podcast and newsletter. I have Jana Rosalind Laird. She's a massage therapist that specializes in chronic pain and injury. She helps her clients troubleshoot the issue and changes that they face so they can enjoy the bodies they experience life through. Kelly Murbach is a founder of Secular Shepherdess, where she holds your cape as you claim the fullness of your experiences and step into the life you want. And Roger Butts is with us. He's an interim minister at All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church in Colorado Springs. I cannot wait to share these messages with you today, you guys. And all right, who did I say was going first? Erica, you are up first. Tell us about the chapter that you wrote for this book.
Thank you, Laura. I had a memory come back in December of 2020. That was a very traumatic experience that happened to me back in 2009. And I didn't realize that I had been living with PTSD since that point in time. And so as a healer and someone who dives into all of this work, I've kind of been on a journey since then to explore different routes to self-healing and getting support in different ways. Outside of that, I began a journey studying with the Caro Pacos in January of 2022. And the Pacos are indigenous people who live in the high Andes of Peru, and they are direct descendants of the Inca. So they are nature mystics and healers of their community, kind of like a shaman. And so every week last year, we spent time learning their wisdom through a translator. Now, part of my Paco practice was connecting with nature as a living being. So there's your nature mom and dad. There are the mountains and the rivers that hold us and provide for us and care for us. And part of my Paco practice was building these relationships locally. I live in Michigan now. In May, my family and I returned to Colorado, and that's where I had lived when this trauma had happened. And so though it was a joyful time to kind of go back to our roots and visit the place where I met my husband and where our first daughter was born, it was also bringing up a lot of trauma for me and a lot of memory of what I'd experienced. And while I was there, I decided to go make a pilgrimage to these places that were special to me. And like the mountain at Mount Princeton where my husband and I got married. And I made an offering to Chalk Creek that flowed behind us during our ceremony. And then we returned to Colorado Springs, and I went back in front of the house where I lived in this traumatic experience and actually thanked Pikes Peak and Red Rock Open Space for supporting and holding and loving me during that experience. I thank them for my life, because without the support of nature, I don't know if I could have survived that time. And though it was overwhelmingly painful to face what had happened to me, my story is honestly about this journey back to Colorado, about releasing the heaviness that I've been carrying and finding this new gratitude and reclaiming the joy and the love and all the beauty that I'd experienced at my home there.
I kind of want to rewind back to what you said about there's a moment where you realize something does need to be healed, and you started talking about the awareness of your trauma. And I think that's so key and worth kind of backing up and pausing, because when we share that with our listeners, they might have a moment where they're like, oh yes, I think I need to give myself permission to pause there in the awareness. What else do you want to say about that?
Honestly, when this memory came back, and even with the symptoms, I was experiencing this anxiety, not feeling safe in my body, in my space, even with my family. I was still very much in denial that I had experienced trauma. My mom's a nurse, and she said, "This sounds like PTSD." And I'm like, no, it's not that bad. There are people that have it worse than me. And I believe that every person that has unrecognized trauma is always trying to minimize their experience and not really face the fullness of how this has impacted their life. And so just to face that, just to hold that as a possibility, maybe this has really affected me, was a tough thing to do. But just allowing the possibility that there could be a problem also allowed the possibility that there could be help. And so it took me kind of admitting that maybe there was something deeper going on, that I was able to open myself up to seeking support and answers that could help me through it.
Erica, thank you for that. I agree with you in terms of minimizing. I think we're really good at that. And I think that we can even pause there for a moment and ask ourselves, if that's something that we're doing for ourselves. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So, Jana, I would love to hear about your chapter.
Oh, thank you, Laura. It's chapter 11, and it's how I manifested my partner. In 2017, I had a huge inspiration, intuitive feeling, however you want, whatever kind of weight you want to put on it. I had a huge feeling to move to Colorado from Virginia. So I closed up my practice and packed all my stuff and drove cross country. I only knew one person in Colorado Springs, which was my aunt. And I thought, this is where I'm supposed to be. I pulled into town, and I still remember the first time seeing Pikes Peak and just overwhelming sense of feeling home. And through that journey, I found a spiritual community that just spoke to my heart. And Ariana Platten was the one who was the reverend there. And so for me, I sat there during that first service, and I had several key words that kept on coming up that I was like, okay, there's a sign. Okay, there's a sign. Okay, there's a sign. And then she was offering a class on manifesting and helping you understand the barriers that were in your way of truly getting the life that you wanted. And I had, at that point, I had owned a massage practice and a therapy center for 11 years. I was successful. I had done all of my business goals. The only thing that was really missing was that partner to share it with, and that partner to have that life experience with. And so for me, I was like, okay, this is where I need to focus. This is where I need to be. As my little girl starts talking. And so I focused on just really getting into the nitty-gritty of what was holding me back, what kind of repeating patterns I had, what kind of rituals I needed to incorporate to be able to grow past what was holding me back. And this chapter is about the rituals that I did that really made the difference, and how much growth there was, and how much I learned that I truly needed to not only hone in what I really wanted, but also the relationship with myself, and recognizing the relationship with myself was what I was bringing forward. And so by healing my relationship with myself, I was growing into being with that partner who was going to bring so many wonderful experiences and joy.
So it's one thing to hear the message, it's quite another thing to trust it, and it's quite another thing to pack up your car. Like, do you feel like that was brave? How, not everyone can do what you did.
So I have always been someone that has lived life through my inspiration. And it doesn't have to make sense to anyone. The only person it had to ever make sense to was me. And it really didn't matter. Yes, it was brave. Yes, it was scary. The first, I understand, honey. It was something that I worked very hard in those first couple of months to just sit with.
So I'm going to help you out by quoting something you just said that I loved. You said the only person it ever had to make sense to was me. If you find yourself on a meme, Jana, I'm loving that. Thank you for being here, and thank you for juggling your life to be here. Kelly, tell us about your amazing chapter.
So when I sat down to kind of write my chapter in this book, I realized that I already had part of it written, because I think every book needs somebody who was a skeptic. And let me tell you, I was a ritual skeptic for a really long time. Given the way I grew up, rituals didn't seem to have any meaning. So when I was an adult, like just kind of coming out of my zombie state and coming alive, I encountered spaces where we did ritual. And it had the really grand name of ritual. And the thing was, half the people doing that ritual didn't have any idea what the heck was going to happen, because we're all kind of in the same space. So when I went to write this chapter, I'm kind of like, how would I tell people to prepare for something they just know is ritual? So I used a poem I had written after one of those rituals as the backbone to kind of help people walk through just what might happen or what they might do to get ready. And what being open looks like, and how sometimes you don't know when you walk in the room what the heck's going to happen. It just happens, and that's kind of where the magic is. Well, and I also wanted to remember a friend. I was going to say, I also wanted to remember a friend of mine. So who shows up and sees me.
Sorry, we're talking over each other. You wanted to remember a friend of yours?
Who shows up in the story and sees me in a way that I hadn't really been seen before, which is the other power of ritual.
Yes. I was just chuckling and wanted to ask you, like, what exactly were you a skeptic about? Just that anything would happen with ritual, or I just want to hear more about that.
That anything would happen. I mean, I grew up going to a Christian church. We were every week Christians. And like, it didn't feel like anything more than an obligation. So like, what? You want me to do what? And and that's supposed to work? Like, it was just like, I don't see this working. I have a really logical engineering brain. I couldn't connect. I'm going to do this, and that's going to cause this and this and this. Like, sometimes ritual you have to do not understanding necessarily what's going to happen. And that's a really hard thing for some people to do, especially if they don't have any framework.
Well, one more thing about that, like, how do you tie energy into it? I see what I feel, and I've recognized that whatever happens, as an energy shift. Do you think about it that way in your engineering brain, or do you think about it a different way?
So I'm a engineering brain who looks at things I can actually see, and I can't see energy. So for me, energy is kind of like it works and I don't know how. So I have to do it kind of just close my eyes and do it. Because I don't speak energy a lot of times. And it's just kind of who I am and how I walk in the world.
Well, I am so happy to have you as the skeptic in this book. I can't wait for y'all to read these chapters, seriously. And before we move to Roger, let me just say a big thank you to all of you, all four of you. Thanks, not just for saying yes to this, but for being willing to share those vulnerable stories about who you are at the core, and then you guys, what's beyond that in this book is a book full of the tools for you, practical rituals, things you can practice and have an experience with. And, you can email Kelly after and tell her what you experienced, and I'm sure that she'll be happy to hear it. But Roger, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Thank you, Laura. It's good to be with you. So I wrote my chapter last summer in Montgomery, Alabama, at the Troy University bookstore. And my chapter wanted to do two things. It wanted to lift up the idea of blessing the past and the present and the future. And I wanted to do so through the idea of ritualizing relationships. So I tell two stories, and they bounce off each other. They work together. The first is about baby shugs in Toni Morrison's classic novel, Beloved. And in that, Baby Shugs, who is the leader of her community of slaves and ex-slaves, goes out to a clearing. And the first thing she does is she invites the women to come forward, all of the women in this community, to come forward and cry, just cry for the living and the dead. And she asks the children to come forth and laugh and laugh and laugh. And she asked the men to come forth and dance the antelope dance, which was their strength in Africa. So it's a story about memory and grief and hope. And at the end of it, when she finally speaks, she says, love your body, love all of your life-giving parts, love your eyes and your back and your feet and your hands. But above all, love your heart, for that is the prize. So I tell that story. And that's a great story that we read in seminary, 100 years ago before electricity. And that was a great story that we all read in community. But I tell the second story about my uncle Gary, who has written a book that has sold many millions of copies on love languages. And my cousin and I were down in Winston-Salem at his house one winter, one Christmas. And I was about to go to Wesley Seminary as a Unitarian Universalist. My cousin Derek was about to go and open up his house in Austin as a movement church, as a dance church, as a homeless church, as an art place. Two very different kinds of ministries than my uncle, who was a Southern Baptist. And he blessed us. He blessed us. And he gave us a blessing, and he ritualized relationship. When he sends Marta and me a book that he's written, he writes in it, above all, love. He didn't have to ritualize and bless us. He didn't, his son was going off to do a very different kind of ministry. I was a Unitarian Universalist. But what he says in his books, when he writes to us, above all, love. And so this is a story about ritualizing relationships and blessing the past and the present and the future. So I take two very different stories that land in the same place, that relationship and love are more important than any kind of difference or disagreement or ideology or thought or politics, that the face of the other becomes that sacred thing that needs to be ritualized. So that's what my chapter attempts to do.
Thank you for sharing that. You're giving me this little light bulb about every time I sign a book. And I wasn't even thinking about the ritual of it.
Yes.
But it is, and I do the same thing every time as well, and there's a reason I do that. And I think that intention behind the action of putting those words on the book, is really where the energy is and what matters the most. Is there anything else you want to say about that intention behind it?
Well, I mean, my Uncle Gary and I we have differences about how the world works and what's important in the world and how we should organize ourselves. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You put it away, you put it aside, and you focus on love. So when he says above all, love, that's a guidepost. That's a reminder. And we can come from very different places, but the most important thing at the end of the day is that we love one another and that we see in each other the image of God, the image of the divine, the image of the holy, the image of whatever our metaphor is, that there's something sacred. And that's what Baby Shugs was doing too, right? She was taking this marginalized community, this community that otherwise is invisible, and saying, no matter what, you are sacred, you are whole, you are beautiful, you count, you matter, and start with loving yourself, and the world will be transformed.
Yeah, what an amazing message, full of goosebumps for me today.
I love my uncle and I love my crazy cousin, and we all accept each other.
Thank you for being here, Roger. So he didn't know it, but he created this perfect move to the next question I have for all of you. Jana, you're going to be up first for this one, and I'll kind of set the stage a little bit. When Roger talked about this simple ritual in signing, I smiled because I've really noticed a profound effect that sacred rituals have had in my own life. And it's not just those big events that we think of. And that's why Roger made me think of that again. Like, it's not just for the weddings and funerals, that you think of having a ceremony for. It can be in the purposeful intention you put into your morning cup of coffee, into that signing of your book, whatever it is. So Jana, what I want to know is, what has that meant in your life in a day-to-day, maybe smaller kind of practice? What do you think of there? Or is it going to happen? Oh, good. Yay for the binkies.
They're all right. I think about cooking a meal for my family and the intent that goes into that meal and the love that I am infusing into that food, the nutrition, the health, the overall intent of well-being, that I want that food to go into their bodies and help them. So something as simple as just clearing your space when you're preparing that meal so that you can focus on that intention.
Super awesome example. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for that one. It's, sometimes when you hear those examples that seem like small moments of everybody's every day, I feel like sometimes I'm rushing through those moments. And so even hearing you talk about the preparing is helping me take a deep breath and slow down. And that's like what we all need to do, is just slow down in the moment, because every moment could be a ritual, right? Depending on what you put into it. Kelly, how about you on this one? What does that mean to you in your day-to-day?
It means that when I walk outside of my house, I let the world say hi, whether it's lifting my chin up to get the sun on that side of my face, or even ducking out of the way of some raindrops. I let the world say hi. And then I thank the ground for supporting me as I move across it. I think so often I've felt really unseen in my life. And so for me, it's really helpful to remind me that the sun sees me, the nighttime sky sees me, the rain is willing to reach out and touch me in a way that's really super helpful and empowering. It helps me feel less invisible, which is really kind of awesome.
I'm in love with what you just said. I let the world say hi. I thank the ground for supporting me as I walk across it. That's like makes you want to take another deep breath. Thank you for that. Roger, how about you? What is this like for you?
Well, I recall taking my kids, who are now 16, 18, and 20, to school. And we would leave Gold Hill Mesa in the car to go down to school. And I would have one or two in the car. And as we're leaving the neighborhood, Pikes Peak is right there. And I would just say, look at that beautiful scene. Look at that beautiful mountain. And sometimes it was purple and sometimes it was snow covered, and sometimes you could see it through the clouds and sometimes you could. But we had this shared experience of recognizing and affirming beauty, which I think ritual is a shared experience of recognizing and affirming beauty. So that's what I tried to teach my kids and teach myself in that moment.
Yes, beautiful. You're all talking about Pikes Peak today. I'm like, all right, I'm putting that on the list. That's awesome. Erica, how about you?
I feel like I have 1,000 rituals that happen throughout the course of my day, whether it's being in the shower and asking the water to help me clear and release. I believe anything we do when we add intention can become a ritual. But my very favorite daily practice that I learned from the Caro is they believe in Aini, which is sacred reciprocity. And sacred reciprocity is being in relationship between giving and receiving. And it's hard, right, to imagine living in such relationship, I feel like, in our world when we're disconnected from nature. But in their practice, they believe the more they receive, the more they have to give. And as we receive, we're compelled and desire to give back. And the more we give, the more we receive. And so to expand your capacity to give, you expand your capacity to receive. And to take that into a daily practice for me so that I could really live it was to recognize that every breath I take, every inhale is a gift of nature, of the earth, of the plants to me that give me life. And every exhale is a gift that I'm giving of carbon dioxide that feeds the plants. And so my ritual is to breathe in and inhale, I am loved. And then when I exhale, I love. And just that moment, just that breath, 3 breaths, 10 breaths, it can bring me into that sacredness of every moment.
I love the reminder of the give and receive balance. I love that reminder. You all are so amazing. I'm so grateful and lucky to get to play in the sandbox with you all every day. So, y'all have been listening to these wise words, but something I know about all of my healer friends is that we really like to talk about ourselves more as guides and facilitators on the journey. We know that we don't fix people, and we know that there's nothing broken, but we do empower you to connect with your inner wisdom. That's part of how we hope we guide you. And so Kelly, I want to know a little bit about, what do you want our listeners to understand about connecting to their own inner wisdom?
Oh, that's such a huge question, Laura.
I know. We could be here all week on this one, but I know you have a lot of answers for this.
We can be, and I think what strikes me is that so many of us start doubting our own inner wisdom because we've made choices that have led to places we would much rather not have ever experienced. And so it makes it much harder to go back to that inner wisdom and go, what should I do next? And what I want to remind people is that life was never guaranteed to be all sunshine and roses. Like mud and muck exists for a reason. And there's beauty there too, even if it hurts, like, I'll get out when you slam your foot on a rock you weren't expecting. So when it comes to like learning how to trust your intuition, sometimes it's just saying yes, even if part of you just wants to go logically, that's really dumb.
I like that a lot.
Which is hard.
I'm feeling that piece of advice right now. Yeah, it's hard to trust again when you really would rather stay out of the discomfort. I appreciate that, Kelly. Roger, what's this advice from you? What do you want to say about connecting to that inner wisdom?
Baby Shugs, when she went out to that clearing, the first thing she did before anything else, before the ritual, before the sermon, she kept quiet. She kept quiet. You've got wisdom inside of you. You've got the path inside of you. The soul knows the way will open, but you gotta shut up and sit down and be quiet and be still. So centering prayer for me is very important. The Buddhist tradition, the pagan tradition, all the traditions are like, sit down, shut up, and the goddess or the god or your wisdom will shine forth. But you gotta clean yourself up first. And it's hard, it's not easy. And but if you can trust that the process will take you there, reach out when you need to, find community. But stay quiet. It'll come.
Yep. People don't like to hear the M word, the meditation word, and I really appreciate the sit down and shut up. The quieter we get, the more profound those messages can become. I want people to be excited by the sit down and shut up.
Well, yeah, when Father Thomas Keating, who was one of the founders of Centering Prayer, said a nun came to him after a practice, said, I had 1,000 thoughts. And he said, how wonderful, 1,000 opportunities to let go, right?
Yes, perfect. Perfect, I love that. Erica, how about you? What about this connecting with our inner wisdom?
I especially love this question because in my work, I actually guide people to connect with what I call their inner compass, which is the wisdom that lives in mind, body, heart, spirit, and energy. And so our brains are trying to keep us safe. So they tell us things all the time to keep us safe, but they're not always in our highest, most elevated state because that's scary and doesn't feel safe. Our emotions, I believe, are like messengers. They're energy that moves through the body that gives us feedback on what we're experiencing right now. They can be very powerful and very strong, but they aren't necessarily our truth. Our body gives us truth, I believe, because our body is the only part of us that is connected to this present moment. All the rest of us is not really grounded here and now. And so my body will tell me the truth of what it feels in this moment if I can learn to be present and listen. But spirit communicates in whispers. and you have to be quiet. You have to find stillness in order to hear the wisdom of spirit. And so part of what I guide people is that there's no one aspect of our wisdom that is 100% true and correct and reflective of all of us. We have these different parts, and they sometimes are saying different things. And so how is your energy interacting in that? Where do you tend to live? Are you in your head? Are you swept up in your emotions? Are you clear and connected with spirit? And how can we bring in a broader sense of our inner wisdom so that we can acknowledge? It's like getting research from different sources, right? To find out, what is the decision I want to make that will carry me forward? What is my emotion saying? What is my body saying? What is my spirit saying? And then that can help us know where to go next.
I can tell you liked that question. Yeah, I can tell.
I love it.
All of you really like. I love listening because your master teacher is just coming out to play, and you're all so brilliant in that way. Jana, how about you? Sometimes it's hard to go last on these questions. What do you want people to know about that inner wisdom and connecting to it?
Well, as a massage therapist, we are taught to go with our intuition when we're working with clients. You know, they pose this issue that they're having, and you're really doing your best to be still and be quiet and listen to what their body is saying. And from that, then you help them in a way that you wouldn't have expected. You are moving the muscle tissue in a different way than any other client you've worked with, because for them, that is what they needed at that given moment. And so it's honing in and giving yourself the space to listen to your inner wisdom. You know, you have to practice it in order for it to become more magnified. If you are constantly pushing your intuition away, it gets quieter and quieter and quieter. So if you take the time and the opportunity to see if it could be true and do the experiment, it slowly gets louder and louder. And it sometimes, when necessary, it screams. And so thank goodness for those moments, because those are the really important ones. But without intuition, I don't know where I would be. It has been something that I am grateful for, the experiences that have led up to helping me hone that in.
I fully agree with that one as well. You're making me laugh about a moment, you know, intuition, and also the signs that we get, some smaller than others. And one of my moments, the hawk basically flew into my windshield and back out again. And I thought, I mean, I see big birds as one of my signs to wake up and pay attention to the moment. But that one was pretty good. I'm like, oh, thank you for that. That was loud. I liked that one.
Can I chime in, Laura?
Yeah, sure.
Jana, I really loved what you said about like building trust, because that's something else that I think people don't realize is like, I can't hear spirit. I don't know what my intuition sounds like. We aren't always good at this stuff, or we tend to prefer one type of wisdom or knowing than another. And I feel like that building of your trust with yourself and allowing yourself to kind of lean in and listen is so important.
Well, and just do an experiment. Just give it a day where you're more still, you have less interruptions, and you just follow your intuition with your decisions and see where it leads you that day. And more than likely, it's going to take you in an unexpected place with a really cool experience that wouldn't have happened if you would have allowed all of those interruptions and all of that noise to cloud your judgment.
And the more we practice, the better we get at discernment and hearing.
Definitely lifelong practice here, y'all. And some of my author friends have really devoted their lives to that lifelong practice. And that's why it's so fun to be with you all, walking your walk and then speaking about it and teaching about it. All right, I have one more. We're going to go as short, sweet, and powerful as we can for this last round, okay? But we have listeners, and they're nodding their heads at you all today. They're getting it. They're having some light bulb moments. But it's been a tough few years for so many people, and they're on this healing journey, and they might just need that last word from you about even how to take that first step. Roger, what do you want people to know?
The stories I told in the chapter are about relationships, and if we can re-enchant and ritualize our relationships. So if your relationship isn't working for you, if something is a dead end, reach out for community that is life-giving. And then, of course, the other part of it was about self-compassion. So it's both and, right? Finding community and being really self-compassionate with yourself.
Yes, powerful. Thank you. Erica, what's that thing you want people to know?
Grief is normal. And when you've been through a lot of pain and a lot of hard times, or you've lost or changed in some ways, even if you're changing for the better, there is grief at what we're losing, what we're letting go of, what we're saying goodbye to, and honoring yourself in the pain, in the loss, in the grief, in the ending allows you to release that hold on what was and be more fully ready to step into the next phase of your life or whatever that looks like. And so don't be hard on yourself. That's an opportunity to really honor who you are, where you've been, and also where you're going.
Thank you. Jana, how about you?
Well, I would like to share that we all need to adjust our perspective. Yes, the last couple of years have been hard. We have had challenges and experiences that we never expected in our lifetime. But if we change our perspective and focus on the good that has come out of this time and the blessings that have changed our lives for the better, look how much more we have focused on relationships and connecting with people because we were disconnected for a time and it was much harder to come together. So yes, we can focus on the horrible aspects of the last couple of years, but we really should be focusing on the good that's come from it.
Perspective is a life changer. Kelly, what do you want to say?
I'm going to totally cheat because I want to say two things. The first one is keep with the breathing. It's really short and simple, but when I get really overwhelmed, I forget to breathe. So keep with the breathing. And the second one is, if it's not working, think like an engineer and try something different. Because that's how you change where you're at.
Yes, thank you. You guys, all of you, thank you so, so much for what you do in the world. And thank you for being here to share it today. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much, Laura.
So
Thank you for having us, Laura.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Y'all, I can't wait for the book to come out. It's coming, right? But you're invited to our book launch party. That's going to be on February 18th, 10 a.m. Eastern. I'm going to be gathering with all of the Rites and Rituals authors, and we'll be doing some fun giveaways. You'll find that on the Brave Healer Productions Facebook page, and I have you linked up below. But one of the biggest missions that I have here with these projects and the book is, there's so much more than a book. You are staring at part of the community that has come together to help you. So I know that something that Jana or Erica or Kelly or Roger said today, maybe it gave you the goosebumps, maybe it made you curious, maybe you want to continue that exploration, right? So scroll on down to the show notes because I have them hooked up with their websites, and this community is very generously there for you to take that next step and give you that support, continue the conversation, answer the question. So please go explore all of the awesomeness that they are up to. And if you happen to be listening to our interview anytime around that February 18th date, then hop over to Amazon, because that means the book is ready for you and you can grab your copy. Lastly, today, everyone, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it's time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.